Now, it is my privilege to...
Get out of here.
I don't know, am I blushing? To welcome Sofia, who I both deeply respect and admire, and whom I know to be incredibly dedicated to her craft, so I'm very happy to welcome her. Sofia Lopez was born and raised in Guaynabo, Puerto Rico. She received her BA in English from Cornell University and spent a year working as a web developer before moving to San Francisco to pursue a career in writing. She is currently an MFA candidate in fiction at San Francisco State University and subsists on a diet of wine, kale, and books.
Woo!
So it's true, I mostly eat veggies, wine, and books. That's about it. So I'm going to be reading from a story some of you guys already know. But okay, so here we go. From the bed of the truck where you and I sat, we saw the eyeballs roll across first. Except from far away, they didn't look like eyeballs at all. They looked like golf balls surfing through the Nevada desert. "What's that?" you asked, biting into your mustard and pastrami sandwich. That's when we saw the two children. Couldn't have been much older than 10, running after their eyes. One of the kids stumbling and bumbling and lagging behind. I jumped from the truck bed, you and your sandwich always a step behind, and we ran after the golf balls and that tumbled through the air, touching down only to spring back up looking like dolphins. But we caught them. I got 2 and you got the 3rd. When you opened your fingers and saw that it wasn't a ball sitting in the palm of your hand, but an eye, you dropped it with a yelp. The desert had to be one of the worst places to lose an eyeball. Desert and beaches and knife drawers were all horrible places in which to lose eyeballs. The 2 I held were so coated in sand that they looked like little sad chicken nuggets recalled for accidental inclusion of body parts. I picked up the eye you had dropped before the wind could send it rolling again. The children were not far behind. They were dressed in unfaded jeans and Easter-colored polo shirts. Their faces were babyish. They had full cheeks and the unblemished skin of prepubescent, and where their eyes should be, gaping pink cavities like fresh wounds. One of them had one eye still in his head, and he reached us first. "Those are ours!" "I wasn't going to keep them or anything," I said, handing the eyes back. He took them greedily. "Thanks, lady." He smiled at me, and I smiled back, but the hole in his face caused an unease in my stomach, and I couldn't bear to look at him for long, so I turned to you. "Come on, we should head back soon." You had vacuumed up the last bites of sandwich, and your cheeks stretched like a chipmunk's. It brought out the thin scars along your jaw. With your mouth so full, you only managed to nod, and we set off in the direction of the truck. Behind us, the children hunched over their eyes, blowing on them gently, trying to determine which were whose. You and I got back in the truck. I drove, because ever since the accident, your knee locked up weird. So we drove back into the heart of Vegas, me at the wheel, and you hanging your head out like a dog. Few restaurants would cater to us. Certainly nowhere fancy. We wound up in a grimy, worst meal you've ever eaten since Elmer's Glue Diner, where the French fries weren't worth the skinning of a potato. The floor was sticky, and so were the tables. The light blue paint had drooping bulges where water leaked through. There was a fine tinge of decomposition, mingled with the scent of overused frying oil and cheap ocean-scented detergent. "I'm starving." "The sandwich wasn't enough?" I asked. "Not even close." Your eyes traveled down the laminated menu. "Steak and eggs with a side of hash browns? What'd you think?" You leaned the menu down and looked expectantly at me. I smiled, and this pleased you enough that you retreated behind the menu, and I went back to surveying the griminess of the diner. A few tables away, a middle-aged woman with big boobs and bigger hair exclaimed, "Oh, Bernie, not again!" as small red dots appeared on the back of her companion's shirt. In a matter of seconds, scarlet blood began to pour from them. I looked away. "Why don't we find a nicer place?" I asked. Your head appeared over the menu. First, wild, scraggly black hair, then a large forehead bisected by a thin scar. Eyes so dark that when the light reflected in them, they looked like galaxies, as bottomless as your stomach. A straight nose and thin lips. "What's wrong with here?" I shrugged. "Don't you like it here?" you asked. "It's kind of shitty, don't you think?" "Yeah, but we're not going to be able to find anywhere better. You know how it is." I looked away. The moment I heard you sigh, I knew it had been the wrong thing to do. "Oh, I get it," you said. "You can find somewhere nicer. It's me who's the problem, right?" Part 2. We were married at 19. Who the fuck knows anything about marriage at 19?
Hallelujah.
I remember it was a cloudless summer Sunday when the universe conspired to give us everything. There we stood, facing one another, me in my thrift store short white dress, you in your old brown suit. I had spring blooming in my heart and shooting stars coursing through my veins, and all I needed was to see you standing there, handsome and young and so alive, and I knew we would make it, that whatever love we had was the world-shattering, soul-healing kind. Our marriage was a venture that could only be undertaken passionately, stupidly, as if there were no limits to what we would sacrifice. We entered wedlock with the wrecking force of a bulldozer, swung in with the ruthless bravery, determined to prove there was nothing that could pull us apart. And for a while, we proved it. We had nothing, yet we lacked nothing. There was freedom in the absence of possession, in having nothing to lose, and it was in this freedom that we grew intertwined, you and I and our endless nothingness. We didn't fall in love, we consumed it, grew in it, and burning it like infinite fuel, we flew into our private heaven. And what a heaven it was. Newlyweds, broke, and too young to give a shit, we moved into what must have been the crummiest apartment in West Hartville. It was a broken-down studio with a ramshackle kitchenette and a small bathroom where the water ran a pale shade of ochre. There were stains on the carpet shaped like various bodily functions, and a single window sealed shut, looking into a trash-filled alleyway. We had no bed. On our first night as husband and wife, we laid on a pile of cushions under Salvation Army blankets, and we drank $6 Andre like it was Dom Perignon. We washed out the bottle and used it as a base for a bouquet of bright forget-me-nots. Sitting cross-legged on our cushions, we stared at them, letting their color pierce so deep into our corneas that we never saw blue the same way. Perhaps because of some drug, or because of the chemicals in the bug spray that so frequently perfumed our apartment, or perhaps simply due to euphoria, I remember our first year of marriage as if in a haze. My senses were dulled in a way no pharmaceutical has been able to replicate, as if it was too much for one person, the everything I felt. My body allowed me to feel it only a little at a time, dragging it out so that I'm still feeling it now. I was at home in the way we were always naked, always more than naked. We were unshaven, smelling of musky skin instead of perfume, lying in odd positions, careless with the placing of our limbs. And you kept me climbing deeper into fantasy. You walked into the apartment one day and said, "Get dressed and follow me." I was high, floating on helium, eating raw cherries by wrapping my tongue around them and plucking them from the stem. I popped one cherry in my mouth. "Where are we going?" "Follow me," you said. I popped another cherry in my mouth. I slipped on denim shorts and a dark camisole sans bra and popped another cherry in my mouth. You took my cherries from me. "Where are we going?" "Trust me," you smiled. You led me a few blocks down the street to where you had located the headquarters for a small journal, the Something Poetry Review of something. They were closed. I hadn't noticed how late it was, but the sun had set and the air was dark. Behind the building was a green metal dumpster. "Look inside," you said, handing me a cherry from the jar hidden in your jacket. "Inside where?" "Inside there?" I asked, pointing to the dumpster. You nodded. I wasn't tall enough to peek inside, so you hoisted me up with a violent hug until I saw over the dumpster wall, a white ocean of unwanted poems, hundreds and thousands of rejected words printed on crisp white paper. Marvelous. With your help, I climbed inside, and a minute later you followed. That night, we dined on cherries and rejected poems. We ate them up greedily, ravenously, devoured them and sucked them dry. In our wake, we left a trail of stems and well-read verses. One poem we took home. It was an angst-filled sonnet by a heartbroken teenager titled Soulmates Don't Exist. And underneath, in your handwriting, but if they do, then you're mine. Once, we got the idea we needed furniture. We drove to a store and walked among impeccably decorated living sets. We agreed that they looked like clean gallons of bleach, and why the fuck would we want to live there? So we bought more cushions, a thick blanket, and a red peaky mask that we hung over peeling paint. We didn't go on vacations, weren't seduced by gym memberships, boats, art classes, or electronics. Penny after penny we saved because we had all we needed. 2 years later, something changed. It was the new apartment that rattled us out of orbit. No, honestly, it wasn't the new apartment. We were 21 when it began. New concerns incubated like bugs inside our guts. By 22, they'd hatched. Anxiety and ambition, twin infant monsters inside us, constantly demanding, feeding, growing, and the more they grew, the harder they flapped their monstrous wings and sank their poisoned fangs into our organs. We both felt it, the pressure of the monsters within us. We weren't growing apart, but we were growing up. Perhaps it's unfair to say that it began with you. It might have been that your monsters flapped harder than mine, and almost out of your control, your fingers began to ache to type. Perhaps all you did was let them type, and what came out was code. You taught yourself JavaScript, then Java, then C#, and a bunch of heebie-jeebie that before long had you talking about recursion like it was a Buddhist ideal, summing up the universe. You taught yourself how to code, and you were damn good. You got a job programming for a bank. I never fully understood what it was you did, but the way you talked about it, I knew it was art. It wasn't long after we found a permanent job that I got one too, working at an art gallery. I was the one who said we needed to move, and you said, okay, as if that was all that needed saying. So we moved into a one-bedroom house across a dog park, and we bought a dark wood 4-poster bed with a thick mattress and plush white bedding. We never desired more than this, not until one night when you walked through the front door, nursing in your arms a packet of information in a dark purple folder. On the front it read, fear losing your loved ones? Guarantee them for up to 5 years after death with live proof. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. That's it.